podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, 'cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, 'cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K. 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 S-I-C-K.
All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, 'cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, 'cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K. 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 S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With Tony Marinaro.
55 seconds left in the penalty, a minute and 27 seconds left in regulation time. Boston 4, Montreal 3. Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to Lafleur.
The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
You're in the ball!
Sports entertainment like no other.
Rejoint, on lui fait perdre la rondelle, une passe devant. Et c'est le dégagement et ce sera la victoire des Canadiens. Coupe Stanley pour les Canadiens. Le 23e de l'histoire.
You found the dogs! John, you found the dogs! He found the dogs! And all together, they worked a young team to the top. And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup!
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. La Vida Tibi. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination. It's gonna be sick.
Marinaro on this Wednesday, August 7th. Thanks, everyone, for watching on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Twitter. And once again, in all transparency, I am still in Spain, so this podcast was recorded a little bit earlier. Thanks for watching. The Sick Podcast is brought to you in part by Energy Transportation Group, a leading full-service logistics provider serving all of North America. They are driven to be different. Also brought to you in part by Bittt TV. Their new Ultra Lager, refreshing, perfect for the hot summer days with only 2 grams of carbon, 4.8 ABV, available in a pack of 6 and 12 in grocery stores all around the province of Quebec. It's ultra light, ultra refreshing. Brought to you by Playground. 1,000 square foot through games located just over the Mercier Bridge, only minutes from downtown Montreal. Playground without and the top Montreal. Pierre, how are you?
How are you, Tony?
Thanks for doing this, Pierre. Look, want to give the listeners a head up. Obviously, when you're living out of a hotel room, you're at the mercy of their internet and their Wi-Fi, and sometimes it's stable, and sometimes it's not, and sometimes it might have a glitch. So bear with us, and I think it's going to get better as the show goes on. Pierre, I want to start with, and you and I had this discussion, but I think there's enough here to pick up on it. A couple of weeks ago, I think we talked about the fact that there was an expectation that Kent Hughes was going to make a deal to reinforce the Canadian second line. He did that over the past couple of years. He made a deal to go out and get Alex Newhook the day of the draft or the day before, the year before that. On draft day, he went out. He made a deal to go out and get Kirby Dach. He was open about it, that he wanted to go out and get someone to reinforce his second line. Everyone knows they're looking for a player to be able to play with Kirby Dach. Maybe a year from now, that situation is different because Demidov will come over and you're able to add a player that way. But based on what we're hearing, Pierre, he tried for Rucker McGroarty. It didn't work out. He tried for Martin Eschash. It didn't work out, who signed an extension with Carolina. For Zegras, and it didn't work out. Now, Marco Normandin, who's had some good scoops in the past of Absolument Fan, he reports that he believes a deal was on the table between the Canadiens and the Ducks involving Trevor Zegras, and for the Canadiens, going to Anaheim would have been Logan Mailloux, and the pick that ended up being the 21st pick overall in the draft, which Canadiens chose to draft Michael Hage. Pierre, we trust Marco on his report. Having said that, is it something that makes sense to you? Yes or no?
I'd be surprised if Anaheim would want to take a defenseman just based on their organizational depth at that position. That's really one of the places where they have unbelievable internal depth with young defensemen. They're a lot like the Montreal Canadiens, just on the west coast of the United States, not in the province of Quebec. But I would be surprised, and maybe that's why it was a non-starter. I think Logan Mailloux's got a legitimate chance to play for the Montreal Canadiens this year, and I think they're internally they feel the same way. I don't like to comment on other people's scoops or their ability to break news, so I don't think that I want to talk about the name so much, but I would say this. I've heard about Trevor Zegras being available for a long time, much like a lot of people in Montreal know that he's been available for a long time. Marty Necas, a lot of people weren't sure if Carolina was going to have the money to sign him. I keep hearing, and not to Montreal, but I keep hearing Patrick Laine and his name being available out there. I don't know if Montreal has an appetite to do a deal to try to get him in there or not. Rutger McGroarty, I don't know what's fallen out of favor between Winnipeg and the McGroarty camp, but I've watched that kid play for a long time. He's a very good player. Would he help Winnipeg? Yeah, he would. So I don't know why Winnipeg would be in a rush to trade him unless the kid has said, just like Cutter Gauthier told Philadelphia, I'm not going back. I'm not going to Philadelphia, so you better trade me or I'm going to be a free agent. So that could be it. But in terms of Montreal, they've definitely tried to make deals, Tony. Absolutely, they've tried to make deals.
Pierre, it wasn't the plan because I've been talking about Laine so much on the podcast, but since you brought it up, I had this conversation with Eric Engels, and Eric doesn't think there's much of a chance that Patrick Laine will one day be a Montreal Canadian. He believes the Canadians have a culture, and he doesn't believe Laine fits into it. He also believes, I think, that the risk would be a little bit too high, a player coming out of the player assistance program. He also believes that the Canadians are trying to have their players play that game. And if you take a look at Patrick Laine over the last couple of years, it hasn't exactly been his game. I would always be interested when a player scores 30, 35, 40 goals because it's the toughest thing in the world to do. And not many players in the National Hockey League do it. So I'll start with this. How nervous would you be about trying to make a deal for a player, spend time in the player assistance program?
Well, first of all, before I'd ever do a deal like that, I would need instantaneous access to the player, to his representatives, probably to his family, and to the medical professionals. I would never do this deal just taking somebody else's word on it. So it'd be really important that we could have open dialogue with the player, his family, the medical professionals, and try to get all the I's dotted and all the T's crossed. It's a hard deal to make. It is. I believe everybody deserves a second chance and sometimes even a third chance. But I would tell you in this type of a situation, I would really need to talk to a lot of different people. And if Columbus wasn't prepared to give me that opportunity, then I would not even consider the deal. I wouldn't even consider it.
I hear you. The way he plays, blue line in. Of course, every coach wants to have their players playing a 200-foot game. But are you a believer that you can make an exception for a huge offensive talent? If an offensive talent says, look, I need to cheat to score goals, would you be willing to quote unquote close your eyes on that, or have others pick up the slack, or for you to all players have to be all in the same way?
No, I think you can always bend the rules. There are different rules for different players. I won't go into the names of those players that I know, but I know a lot of guys that have coached in the league for a long time that when you get a pure goal scorer, a guy that can, put up 35 to 45 to 50 goals a year, you might sometimes look the other way when they turn the puck over in a high danger area, or they, cheat on the back check, or they don't pick up their point man in end zone coverage and he gets beat to the net. So, you always can look the other way. I think that comes down to a coaching style and a managerial style, Tony. But I would always be prepared, and I learned this from Scotty Bowman so long ago. There are different rules for different players. I'll use Brett Hull as an example because I'm really comfortable that Brett wouldn't take offense to this. Was he the most diligent back-checking player you ever saw? No. But could he raise his arms over his head to celebrate a goal 40 to 50 times a year? The answer is yes, and sometimes more than that. He's an unbelievably valuable player for so many different teams, talking about Brett Hull, but in particular for Dallas and for Detroit. So the answer is, Bob Gainey could look the other way. Ken Hitchcock could look the other way. Mike Keenan could look the other way in St. Louis. And Scotty Bowman could look the other way sometimes in Detroit. So I think that's an example of what you're probably talking about.
I was told a story, and I don't remember which Canadiens alumni it was that told it to me, but maybe it was actually Stéphane Richer himself. Richer had a couple of coaches who obviously weren't crazy about his 200-foot game. And a couple of his teammates went to his coaches and said, let's cut him a little bit more slack. And if we're playing with him, we'll cover for him. Because they knew that if he had a little bit more liberty than the rest, he could have the potential to score 50 goals. And as it turned out, he scored 50 plus twice in a 3-year span. So Richer had that liberty. He was given that liberty.
Yeah. I think there's a lot to that. I mean, when he first came into the NHL, you're probably not old enough, but Guy Lafleur wasn't exactly the most diligent defensive player in the history of the game. But because he played with Jacques Lemaire, and because he had a chance to play with Peter Mahovlich, and because he was coached most of his successful part of his career by Scotty Bowman, that part of his game evolved. But it didn't happen immediately. And by the end, he was one of the most diligent 200, you call it a 200-foot player today because that's what everybody calls it. But back then, it was called a two-way player. And he became one of the most diligent two-way players in the history of the game. He really was unbelievable at it. So I think, when you get guys that have that kind of talent, you can always bend the rules a little bit for them.
All right. Okay. So Patrick Laine, I know you said you need to have a lot of information. And if you can't get a lot of that information, if Columbus doesn't allow you to get that information, you totally stay away. Can you think, Pierre, and I was trying to think about this earlier today. I hate to put you on the spot, but if there's somebody that would know, it would be you. Players that came out of the Players Assistance Program were looking for a second chance or a third chance and had a lot of success after that. I was trying to think about that today, and there was no one really came to mind. I'm going to kick myself at this because probably everyone's watching right now is probably saying, well, that guy. But
it's fair to ask the question. This is one of those where I don't like really talking about a lot of the names, but I do know guys that have gone in to the program. And I don't think he would have a problem if I said his name, but Theo Fleury is one of the guys that went into the program. And there were some nights he was really good and other nights where he wasn't as good. But Theo, to me, was a game breaker. He was a dynamic player. He was a tremendously talented guy. And he's one of the guys that I think, and he was an undersized player in a big man's league when there was no stretch pass, which was amazing when you think about it, all the things that he did. So he's one player that I think I can really confidently say did experience some program stuff and came out and was still very successful.
Pierre, at one point months ago, we talked about Jacob Fowler. We know that you're the president of the fan club, and you have a lot of company at that. And you talked about maybe trying to fast track his career, but now it looks like they don't have to, and they can take their time because Montembeault's under contract, Caden Primo's under contract. I'm wondering, what would be your plan with Caden Primo and Jacob Fowler? What would be your plan?
Oh, I would very seriously think about taking. And first of all, if Doug Brown's watching or Greg Brown's watching this at Boston College, I apologize. I'm a good friend of his. He's the head coach there. You don't want to see any coach lose their good players. This guy's a superstar, Tony. He's not a little bit good. He's really good. I would probably take him out and give him one full year in the American Hockey League after this season. He's going to play for an elite team at Boston College. They're going to have a legitimate chance to go to the NCAA final, at least to the Frozen Four. They'll have a legitimate chance to win Hockey East. He's going to probably be, if not the starter, he's going to be the 1B with the World Junior team. There's not much more he'll have left to prove, Tony. He won't have much more left to prove.
So one more year at Boston College, and then
this
1 year
year, and then
Hockey
pull
League.
him out at the end of the year. That's just what I would try to do. Yep.
All right, and how about Montembeault and Primo?
Well, Montembeault and Primo, I think he can go 1A, 1B. I mean, Montembeault did some really good things last year. He did some really good things, I thought, and I salute the Canadians for giving him the extension. With Primo, again, this is a kid I've been watching for a long time, going back to when he was playing at Northeastern for Jimmy Madigan before he turned pro at Montreal. I still think he's got more upside left in him. I don't think he's maxed out his game. I really don't. So a guy like that, you never know. He comes in and gets on a roll. He could be unbelievable. But I can't see the Canadiens playing one guy 50 games and the other guy playing 32. I just don't see it. I think it's going to be a tighter ratio in terms of who's going to get. I think Montembeault will play more, but I think Primo will obviously get an opportunity to play a lot more than he did this year too.
I actually can see the 50 and the 32. I can actually probably even see the 52 and 30. But I'll say this, Caden Primo's 3 years younger than Samuel Montembeault. And when I saw Samuel Montembeault for the first time, and I'm not no goalie expert by any means, I thought he was an American Hockey League goalie when the Canadiens picked him up on waivers. I really did. And pretty blown away. He deserves a lot of credit. He's obviously got a lot of character. But I'm going to say this, Caden Primo, 3 years younger, you know, for me, there's no reason not to believe that Caden Primo can't reach Samuel Montembeault's level 3 years from now.
No, he might be able to do it sooner than that. The one thing you got to remember with a goalie, so Montembeault got thrown in pretty quick on a really bad team in Florida. They were bad, Tony. And those guys get broken down when they're on bad teams. It's hard to be a goalie on a bad team. One of my best friends in hockey is Joe Malash. And Joe was a phenomenal goalie, but he got stuck on terrible teams every city he went to. And, you know, I'll never forget the night we won the Cup in Minnesota in 91, and just sitting on the bench, and he was crying, and I was crying because of it. And he was just talking about all the time that he had played in the league, and he never had anything close to this kind of success. And then he was the goalie coach in Pittsburgh, and he was watching Tommy Barrasso, you know, win a cup in Minnesota on the road. It just shows you, like, here's a guy that was an elite goalie. He was a really, really good goalie, but he got stuck on bad teams. I think that happened to Montembeault. He got stuck on a bad team in Florida, really bad.
Didn't Jill own a Delalo's once upon a time?
He did. He and his brothers, right down, right near the Atwater Market. You're absolutely right. They did. So you bring that up now. When we used to play in Montreal and practice, Jill would ask all the guys what they wanted for an order, and all these hamburgers would come up from Delalo's into the dressing room after practice. It was pretty good.
Buck burgers. Yeah.
We'd save our per diem. All our per diem.
Yeah. Next to my home, of course, is the Delalo's on Allard in Villemard, which was just a couple of blocks away from where Mario Lemieux grew up on Jock Street, the second home on Jock Street, which obviously is no longer theirs. But you walk into that restaurant still today, there's so many pictures of Mario up on the wall, because Mario used to, playing with the, you know, Villemard Hurricanes, used to drop in there all the time. And geez, Pierre, you know, it's every time I bring up Mario Lemieux's name, I mean, it was such a privilege to watch that player play. I can't imagine how much of a privilege it was for you to have the view that you had from behind the bench.
Well, it wasn't just that. It was the view on the ice at practice too. You know, I had the good fortune of the second year we won the cup running the practices, and Mario was amazing. Tony, I told the story to a few people. I'll tell it to you and your viewers now. In 1991, we had already won the cup in the spring of that year. Half our team was going to New York to play an exhibition game, and the rest of the team was going out to Colorado to have training camp in Vail. It was Bob Johnson's idea. We had done it the previous year, and it was really good training at altitude. And we worked out of there. So after that one group of players played in New York, they all flew out to Colorado, and we would fly out to San Jose. We'd fly to LA. We'd fly to Anaheim. We'd go into Dallas. There was no Colorado Avalanche then. They were in Quebec City still. So I had to report in. There were no cell phones. So we landed about 2.5 hours late in Denver at the old airport. And I called Craig and Scotty on the phone. They were in New York at the hotel. And I said, we're late. I don't know if we're going to make it to the practice rink. We were supposed to practice that day. And Craig and Scotty both said, you have to practice. So I said, okay, we'll practice. So I went to Mario on the bus. I said, his nickname's Ace. I said, hey, Ace, I have a favor to ask. He said, sure, what is it? I said, we got to practice, but you got to be the guy that stirs a drink. Like, you got to make it happen. He says, I'll tell you what, you get us some food and we'll have a practice. So you have to see this. We're driving up the road to Vail from the airport. We pull over at a fast food place. I don't know if it was Burger King, McDonald's, Wendy's. I don't know. There's a hamburger spot on the side of the highway, Tony. We pull in, all these big guys get off the bus, they go in, they get back on the bus, we go up to Vail. You can ask Paul Coffey, you can ask Mark Recchi. I'm just throwing the Hall of Famers out there. You can ask Jaromir Jagr, he was there. Larry Murphy was there. Joey Mullen was there. Ask any of the guys that were there that are in the Hall of Fame. They will tell you in all their years, they never saw a guy put on a show like Mario did that day in Vail. It was surreal how good he was. And everybody had to follow. And he says, how was that? I said, that was unbelievable. He says, yeah, good. It set the tone for our team the whole year. He was so good. He was just so special.
Wow. And look, good on you for realizing that the best player on the team, one of the two best players in the world at that time, had to be on board. And he was kind of like an ally, I guess, right?
He was amazing. We're obviously still very good friends to this day. I go and work at his hockey camp, which is a fantasy camp in the spring times. I'm so grateful that he even asked me to go. And it's such a delight to be there. But he was a guy that if you really put the work in, he admired you and respected you. If you were a guy that was saying you were going to run a mile and you only ran 200 yards, he didn't have a lot of time for you. He was a guy that really wanted guys to bring the heat every day. And if you did that, he gave you everything he had. And I just have so much respect for him. Unbelievable respect for him.
All right. So we'll get back to the Canadians, who unfortunately don't have a Mario Lemieux, not just yet, maybe one day, or maybe there will never be another Mario Lemieux. Hard to imagine one, but we talked about the offense. You said they have to hit 250 goals. I think they had 235 or 236 last year. Kirby Dach was out for, the entire season, only played one game. Cole Caulfield scored 28, which is nothing to spit at, but everyone believes that he has more goals in him. Slavkovsky scored 20 in his second season in the National Hockey League. Everyone believes that he'll take a jump. Suzuki's going to be able to pass 33 because that's a pretty good number for a guy who's a playmaker first. And he probably scored 33 because Caulfield scored a little bit less and because Dach wasn't there. So I'm not so sure he's going to hit that number. But if you don't add a player to the second line, that you believe it's going to be tough. Besides the power play.
Yeah, so there's a couple things at play here, though, and this is important. I'm glad you brought it. Lane Hudson on the power play, he's going to add some point totals, especially goal totals for some of those players. Now, do I think Cole Caulfield will be one of the beneficiaries? The answer is yes, I do. But when it comes to 5-on-5 scoring, there are two guys that have kind of circled for me. Josh Anderson's one of them. He's got to elevate. I mean, if he can't get going, he can't be like he was this year. He can't. And if he isn't, that's going to hurt Montreal. And the other guy is Newhook. Newhook's got to stay healthy, and he's got to produce some points as a depth player on the team. And if he can do that, along with Kirby Dach, then I think Canadians can get to 250 goals, and I think they'll have a legitimate chance for getting one of those wild card positions in the Eastern Conference. I believe that. I truly do. Let's just look at their division for a second, Tony. You have to think Florida's going to be a playoff team, right? You would agree with that?
Yes, 100%.
You have to think Tampa Bay's got a legitimate chance to be a playoff team. You would agree with that?
I would agree with that, yes.
Toronto Maple Leafs, you would probably think they have a legitimate chance to be a playoff team. So those are the three teams that are locked and loaded to get in from the Atlantic. And then you got to look at how much better is Detroit going to be, how much better is Ottawa going to be, and how much better is Buffalo going to be. And I haven't even talked about Boston yet. I think they got a problem in Boston. We'll see how it plays out in terms of offense, scoring goals. We'll see how that turns out. They're going to be good enough in goal, and they're going to be good enough on defense. We'll see if they're good enough offensively. So for Montreal to get there, if they don't get to 250, Tony, they're not making the playoffs. I don't care how good the rest of their game is. So 250 is a Mendoza, and there's no guarantee even if they get to 250, they can do it.
Pierre, it's been a lot of fun. Shane Gaumont has his work cut out for him because, of course, the internet gave us a few challenges, but I think we were able to get by. Thanks so much for doing this, and I'll talk to you soon.
Hey, congratulations to you and your family and to your son, Tony. I'm so happy for you. Keep on kicking butt.
Thank you.
You got it.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Pierre. Thank you very much. All right. Special thanks to all of you watching. Once again, it was a show that had its challenges because of the internet. it's a little bit strange when you do some of the shows overseas, folks. You do them, I record them pretty much at the same time every day. And then sometimes the signal's great and sometimes it's just terrible. We have to do it a little bit later on. And sometimes it starts great. And then all of a sudden you have a few challenges, but I think Shane Gaumont will be able to work some of his magic. At least I hope. Special thanks once again to Energy Transportation Group, to Liberty, to Playground. And I want to give a shout out to Mantis Sleep, as a matter of fact, as well. Bookmark this, mantasleep.com. If you have a hard time getting a good sleep, well, basically it's a sleep mask. It looks like a blindfold. It's very, very comfortable. It gives you 100% blackout for a very deep sleep. You won't have any light coming in whatsoever. It covers your eyes. It's comfortable. It's adjustable. It'll be a personalized fit for you. And if you go on mantasleep.com, you can order it. But the good thing is that we have a discount code for you. If you use code SICKHABS, you'll get 10% off. And believe me, folks, it's great. I've said this story before. It's a true one. Believe me when I tell you that. I used it. I got it. I used it the first night. I loved it. I told my wife about it. She wanted to use it the next night, and she hasn't given it back to me since. And so I think I'm going to go out and get myself another one because it doesn't look like she wants to relinquish hers, which used to be mine. You know what they say. Happy wife, happy life. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Once again, if you liked it, comment SICK, S-I-C-K. Share it with your friends. Leave us a 5-star review on Apple. It's our way of feeling the love. Special thanks to Pierre McGuire joining us, and special thanks to Shane Gaumont at Master Control. I'm Marinaro. Have a good night, everyone. It's the Sick Podcast.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group, driven to be different. LaBita.tb, embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination.